everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Well. What's he going to talk about? Immigration? Comey? Iran? The 25th Amendment again? Bannon? Trump? Here's what I'm going to tell you right up front. I am sick and tired of this soap opera. I'm sick and tired of it. You know, we live our lives in reality. You go to work every day, most of you. You try and put money in the bank, pay your mortgage, pay your rent, put food on the table. You try to do what's right. Most of us actually pay taxes and carry the weight of all the other citizenry around here. We see what's going on in these dark blue states, how they violate federal law, how all of a sudden they are federalists, how they nullify federal law in order to change the demographics of their states, how members of Congress now are elected largely in some areas of the country based on the illegal alien population. Great piece in Conservative Review on this by Daniel Horowitz. We see China on the rise, Russia on the rise. We see what Iran is doing. Our military desperately needs an infusion of significant amounts of money. It's being blocked by the Democrats, who insist $1 for the Marines, then $1 for food stamps. I watch as the federal judiciary is utterly out of control. And we got to talk about a book. How many days are we going to do this? With Breitbart and Steve Bannon and others who say they want to put America first? Well, then put America first. What's with all the self-promotion with liberal media and liberal authors who you know are going to trash the President of the United States and his family? I don't get it. I really don't get it. We're not going to have many opportunities anymore, given the political demographics in this country, to have a President of the United States who supports 70, 80% of our conservative agenda. Here I am. I never would have believed it. Here I am defending the President of the United States against attacks by Steve Bannon. And not just him. The fact of the matter is, this is a turning point in this country. We are, I'll say it, a superpower in decline. I'm not going to candy coat it. China is right on our heels. China is right on our heels. Their military is being built up massively. They have a geographic reach they didn't have 10 years ago. They have a 100-year plan. We don't even have a 12-month plan. With a political party in this country, the Democrat Party, which is different than any party we've ever had in this country. Oh, yes, I know we've had a Democrat Party, certainly since slavery, because they supported slavery. But I'm not talking about that. It's like the alien. They've taken over the body of the Democrat Party. The radical left, 1960s rioters and protesters, now run the Democrat Party. They run the newsrooms in this country. They run Hollywood. They run the big unions. And we have people sitting down with liberal authors, liberal media types, endlessly promoting themselves at the cost of the President of the United States. Many wonderful aspects of his agenda, some aspects of his agenda which I oppose. And there's no excuse for this. None. The fact of the matter is, we have a very small window here to advance whatever we can advance. We have states now that are not only turning blue, states that are solid blue, and we're never going to get back. If we lose Florida for good, or God forbid, Texas for good, there is no conceivable way we can win the presidency again. None, under the Electoral College or the popular vote. There is no conceivable way. None. We'll be a one-party country. So rather than focusing all of our attention in securing the border, throwing people out of this country who have violated their visa stays, addressing DACA, getting rid of chain migration, instead of focusing on that, we focus on this crap. This president is doing more than either of the Bush presidencies to put originalists, conservatives on the federal bench. On the federal bench. We've got 51 Republican senators. That's it. We lose the 51. We lose 2 of them. We cannot get originalists on the federal bench anymore. We cannot get an originalist on the Supreme Court anymore. This is serious stuff. Do you know why Nancy Pelosi is telling the more reckless big mouths among her caucus to keep quiet about impeachment? Because they want to pick off enough House members to impeach this president and bog us down in impeachment discussions and debates for the next 10 years to make it impossible for him to govern. To drag down his numbers even further so he couldn't win re-election even if he wanted to. That makes it even more reckless when people who serve the president or who have served the president go off on these strange adventures, working with the left-wing media, working with left-wing authors. It's just appalling to me. Absolutely appalling. You want to have a straight-up UFC fight on ideas, then let's have it. You want to debate it? Let's debate it. But don't sabotage the President of the United States. You don't need to trash his family. We'll leave that to Joe Scarborough. The grotesque fraud and complete sellout, Mr. Deliverance, over there at MSNBC. There's plenty of scumbags like him. They don't need to come from within. And I am truly, truly sick and tired of these dead-ender, never-Trumper guys. I am sick of them. They know damn well that many of the things Trump is doing or is trying to do far more conservative than we would have gotten from virtually any of the other 17 candidates running in the Republican primaries for President of the United States. We know this is true. Trump has actually become more conservative in the presidency than he was when he ran for the presidency. And again, I understand the infrastructure crap. I understand that. I understand the family leave, and we will fight those things. But on so many of the fundamentals, I am speaking as a lifelong conservative. Not somebody who's new to this, as somebody who served Reagan for 8 years, as somebody who served under Attorney General Edwin Meese, as somebody who's written the biggest, most consequential, widely popular conservative book in modern times, Liberty and Tyranny. I'm telling you this because I call it straight. It's what I see. Did you hear what Bannon said? The Mercers. These Mercers. Where did they come from? The Mercers, where did they come from? Billionaires, spreading their money around, All of a sudden, I hear about the Mercers. Never heard about the Mercers 10 years ago. Didn't hear about the Mercers 15 years ago when Reagan was running. Never heard about the Mercers. Now it's the Mercers, the Mercers, the Mercers. Who the hell are the Mercers? I don't even know. I never heard of them before. Oh, Rebecca Mercer. Well, who's Rebecca Mercer? Well, don't you know? No, I don't know. And I don't care. It's not personal with me. You have been told now for a couple of years that conservatism is dead, that conservatism doesn't deliver anything. Ladies and gentlemen, conservatism delivers everything. What is conservatism? Conservatism is Americanism. What is Americanism? Americanism is the basis for humanity. Our principles are the basis for humanity. This idea of unalienable rights. This idea that these unalienable rights do not come from government, they do not come from men, they do not come from women, they do not come from political parties, but they come from the God Almighty himself. That's Americanism. Don't tell me Americanism is dead. Don't tell me conservatism is dead. We have people out there trying to promote different concepts of ideology, different concoctions that they've come up with. They're wrong. The test of history tells us they're wrong. Look at your Constitution. Somebody ought to look at it. God knows members of Congress don't look at it. God knows members of the judiciary simply manipulate it and molest it. You look at it. What's that document all about? What's the document all about? The document's all about ordered liberty, the civil society, virtue. It's not about redistributing wealth. It's not about entitlement programs. It's not about new massive phony infrastructure programs. It's not about open borders where you lose your entire nation state. It's not about liberal judges who are appointed for life, who sit there and decide, which candidate they like or which agenda they like or their personal policy preferences and try and enshrine them in the Constitution. That's tyranny. I understand why the media want us to debate a book. I understand why the media want us to debate anything but what ought to be discussed. I understand it. I really do. But I reject it. Completely and utterly. If you work for the President of the United States, or you have worked for a president, this President of the United States, you should have enough respect and decency. Enough respect and decency not to sabotage him. Not to undermine him. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. But apparently that's not the case. I look at our politicians today. I've never seen a weaker lot of politicians in my life. We actually have a United States Senator from Colorado, Cory Gardner. This guy used to be a conservative when he was in the House. He decided to run for the Senate. He moved into the moderate mode. He's a complete and utter airhead and lightweight. And he's announced on the Senate floor today, in emotions you and I have never seen from the man, that because the Attorney General of the United States is going to enforce federal marijuana laws in all states, including Colorado, which legalized marijuana, he is going to block every single appointment to the Department of Justice. Every single appointment to the Criminal Division, to the Civil Rights Division, to the Bureau of Prisons, to the Marshal Service, you name it. He's going to block it. Because, by God, the people of Colorado have the right to be high. Now, Notice he doesn't have the capacity. He doesn't have the intelligence to change the federal law. He can't persuade his fellow senators to change the federal law. No. But he's going to stand up and block the Trump Justice Department and the Sessions Justice Department. That's what a Republican is going to do to a Republican administration. Nobody will attack this man. Nobody will criticize this man. And he'll dress this up as federalism. Hey, the states should do whatever they want. Really? Well, where are we on this, ladies and gentlemen? Do we support nullification now? The states can do whatever they want. Can they do whatever they want when it comes to the Second Amendment? Ask Cory Gardner. He'll say no. Can they do whatever they want when it comes to sanctuary cities? Ask Cory Gardner. He'll say no. But then ask him about pot. Now we have the new pothead senator who's going to claim that he's the real federalist, you see. Meanwhile, we got to debate a book. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We are within an eyelash of the progressives controlling everything. Everything. Look at the media today. There are pockets of media that are non-progressive. There are even a smaller number of outlets that are openly conservative. And yet, if the Democrats controlled the FCC, you know how many times they've sought to shut down talk radio. They'll do it. They'll do it. There's an effort underway to get rid of the Electoral College through the back door. There's an effort underway to continue to change the nature of many of these red states to purple states and then blue states, like Virginia as a perfect example, to make it impossible to win elections at the national level. Impossible. They want to change the gerrymandering rules. Not because they believe that they're unethical or they don't like them per se. It's because they want to be able to rig the system so they can forever win the House of Representatives. And they want to make sure that regardless of who wins elections, the bureaucracy is so entrenched and their policies are so entrenched and, in fact, are constitutionalized that it doesn't matter who wins the next election. This is what we're facing. I'll be right back.
If you turn off your radio and open the window, you can probably hear him straight from the studio. Call Mark Levin at 877-381-3811.
All right, let's get into some of this stuff now. During the holiday, before the holiday, they passed this tax bill. And the renowned supply-siders are all over radio and TV patting themselves on the back. They think this is magnificent. And I bet many of you think it's magnificent because you're told this day in and day out, day in and day out. I even heard a host who I admire enormously, and I don't listen to many, but I happen to be in the car, claim that these deductions for property taxes and state income taxes have been nothing more than federal subsidies to the blue states. I thought to myself, man, how fast we have sunk. When you pay taxes, ladies and gentlemen, you're not subsidizing any state. You choose to buy a home and you own the home. And your locality taxes your property to pay for, among other things, the schools, the police, the fire department, and so forth and so on. Some states and localities are completely out of control, like in California, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Rhode Island, Maryland, and so forth and so on. And so the thinking of this class warfare stuff coming from the pseudo-right is that, well, that'll teach the states. Maybe they shouldn't do what they do to their citizens. And so in order to teach these blue states a lesson, we're going to punish the citizens of this country who own property, a home, who pay state income taxes, the vast majority, by limiting their deduction. Since when is a deduction a subsidy, ladies and gentlemen, unless you believe all of your money belongs to the federal government? That's your house, that's your property, that's your mortgage, that you're paying every month. You're paying your state income taxes. Since when is deducting those things a subsidy to you by the federal government? It simply means you pay less in federal income taxes than you otherwise would. Well, why should you be treated that way? Right? Isn't that the argument? Everybody should have a level playing field, I think they say. Level playing field. But first we have to agree that it's the individual who pays taxes, not the state. The state doesn't pay any taxes. So if there's pain to be felt as a result of limiting, and in some cases eliminating these deductions, it's felt by individuals and it's felt by families. In many cases, families and individuals who relied on the tax code in advance to purchase their homes. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, when you bought your house, when you put down 5, 10, 20, 50%, or maybe you bought it with cash, I don't know how wealthy you are. The point is you made that deposit and you pay that mortgage with after-tax income. Do you know what I mean by that? You've already paid your federal income taxes. You've already paid your state income taxes. You've already paid all the other taxes that come with being an American. You've paid all those taxes, and then whatever you have left, you'll purchase a car, you'll purchase a home, put down a deposit on a home, a down payment, that sort of thing. So you've already paid taxes on the money at the very end that you get to keep and spend yourself. When you pay your property taxes, you're paying your property taxes on after-tax income. So now, in essence, you're going to pay taxes twice on the same money. Federal income tax, whatever your income is, plus now you're going to pay your property tax with your after-tax money. I know this sounds a little complicated, but that's the way it is. Nobody's subsidizing you. Nobody's subsidizing you because you're allowed to keep a little bit more of your money after you've already paid taxes out of the wazoo. And to hear these so-called conservatives who are now pseudo-conservatives defending this is appalling. Absolutely appalling. They want to turn it into politics. They want to turn it into blue state versus red state. It's nothing to do with blue state versus red state. You're the one paying the taxes. You and you and you. California's not paying federal income taxes. New York's not paying federal income taxes. New Jersey's not paying federal income taxes. Let me tell you something. These so-called supply-siders who are all over radio and TV, they're fakes. They're frauds. I'm the real supply-sider. Me. I'm the one who supports cutting rates across the board. Not them. Mr. Laffer, I don't know what's happened to him with the Laffer curve. He knows full well the Reagan tax cuts were focused on slashing individual federal income tax rates. That was the focus. That was the priority. Now, there were corporate cuts, too, and other changes that that made an enormous amount of sense to benefit the economy. But that said, nobody paid more income taxes after Reagan was done. Nobody had a tax increase. And while I'm out on holiday, on the vacation, listening to this stuff, or driving and going, what the hell has happened here? Well, we didn't do enough on the individual tax side. You sure as hell didn't. So, I don't think we should be congratulating ourselves. Now, in the face of this, you see, and by the way, more and more individuals in this country won't be off the tax rolls, thanks to the increase in that so-called family dependent deduction, which we'll be, among others, pushing for because, you know, this class warfare stuff is endemic. Here's a piece right now related to this. Warren Buffett, who's worth $75 billion, says the tsunami of wealth didn't trickle down, it surged upward. So here we have a class warfare warrior who's worth $75 billion, and he's concerned, you see, because he says between the first computation in 1982 of the Forbes 400 wealthiest list and today, the wealth of the 400 increased 29-fold from $93 billion to $2.7 trillion, while many millions of hardworking citizens remain stuck on an economic treadmill. During this period, he said the tsunami of wealth didn't trickle down, it surged upwards. This is where I get in trouble, and I don't know why. I do. Who cares? Why does that matter? If the guy next door to me was worth 3 cents in 1982, and today he's worth $300 billion, why does that matter to me? How does that affect me? Did I lose something because he became fabulously wealthy? Was I denied something because he or she became fabulously wealthy? There's nothing to do with me or my life. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with capitalism. It may have something to do with the fact that somebody works harder, somebody works smarter, somebody chose a different career path, somebody invented something, somebody failed 5 times and then became wealthy, somebody was wealthy and then became poor. This is a very dynamic, complex economy because it's based on capitalism. What does this have to do with anything? The way you create jobs is not through class warfare or worried about the Forbes 400. The way you create jobs is creating the Forbes 500, 600, 1 million. The way you create jobs, less regulations, less centralized control, more liberty, more choice, more opportunity. That's how people become millionaires and billionaires unless they're crony capitalists. So I read this guy, this Warren Buffett's worth $75 billion. I think to myself, what drives a man like this to say these things? What drives a man like this to say these things? To say the stupidest things possible. We have more stupid billionaires in this country than you can shake a stick at. They know how to make money, but they don't know why. They don't know the model that makes them super wealthy. They don't comprehend liberty. They're billionaires, but they're stupid people. They know how to build, railroad system or broadcast system or this system or that system, but fundamentally they're stupid people. Because they do not understand the underlying principles and model that help them create wealth. And so what do? They say, gee, I'm fabulously wealthy and there's poor people in this country. Our system doesn't work. Our system doesn't work. In these tyrannical, totalitarian regimes, there's a handful of multimillionaires and billionaires. And you know who they are? They're the people who run the governments. It's not because they invented anything. It's not because they produce anything. It's not because they sell anything. Not because they market anything. Not because they service anything. It's using brute force, police power. How many billionaires are there in Venezuela? A couple. The people who stole all the money from the government, from the citizenry, who run the government? Okay. But among the population, the civilian population, how many millionaires and billionaires are left in Venezuela? None, really. Are the people better off? Are the people better off, Mr. Buffett? How about in Cuba? The Castros are billionaires, drug running and other things, stealing the money from their people. But it's okay, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay because everybody's poor. You see, there's not this big gap between the rich and the poor. They don't have to worry about some billionaire who lives next door. How unfair that would be. It's very fair in Cuba. It's very fair in Venezuela. Everybody's starving to death. How many billionaires are there in North Korea? You get my point? This class warfare stuff is poisonous. Absolutely poisonous. And yet, it is ubiquitous. When Paul Ryan was pushing this tax plan on TV, and we played it many times for you, he sounded like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett and Paul Ryan sounded like leftists. These supply-siders, so-called supply-siders, they're not supply-siders. They believe in cutting taxes for corporations. That's not supply-side. That's not supply-side economics. Supply-side economics is slashing taxes across the board. Whatever the legal entity, whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you're an international major corporation, whatever you are. The supply-sider would argue, and did in the past, that you should slash taxes across the board, income taxes, for individuals, corporations alike. That's not what they did. Many, many people were left out. Many, many people were left out. But don't worry, you see, because those are the rich. No, they're not. Oh, yeah, they're rich. They make more than $50,000 a year, so they're rich. Oh, okay. And in this, Warren Buffett, Paul Ryan, and the left agree. There's very few voices left for capitalism. Very few. And yet, when you look around, this is why I want to use my Fox show, use Levin TV, use this microphone to get back out there and educate people about success, about liberty, about property rights, about constitutional government and all these things. I feel we've lost it all. In so many ways. I feel we've lost it all. Why am I a lonely voice defending capitalism? When as I speak, let's see, what time is it? It is 6:48 p.m. Eastern Time. On the East Coast, assuming you can get out due to the weather, you can go to a major grocery store and buy virtually anything from anywhere. In an automobile, where you can get gasoline virtually anywhere. Drive back to your home or your apartment, which is heated. The benefits of capitalism, even more, the benefits of private property rights are so numerous. They're infinite. And yet because they're so numerous, because they're infinite, we don't even recognize them. Instead, we buy into this class warfare crap. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
If you've been thinking about your home security, there's no better time to get it than right now. You've heard me sing the praises of Simply Safe Home Security. It's the best protection, period. Simply Safe has put together a massive security arsenal for your home, a special package handpicked just for you. It's got entry sensors, motion sensors, glass break sensors, everything you need to stop criminals from ever touching your house. And right now, for the holidays, my friends at Simply Safe are giving you, my listeners, an absolutely incredible offer. Get $200 off this special hand-picked security package. It's complete protection for your home. Simply Safe is already the best value in home security, and these are the guys I trust. There are no contracts, no commitments, but right now, and I mean right now, get $200 off this holiday special security package. Just go to simplysafemark.com right now. This is possibly the best home security deal you'll ever see. That's simplysafemark.com to save $200 on my special Simply Safe Home Security Holiday Pick. simplysafemark.com. Chris, El Paso, Texas, the great KTSM. Go.
Hey, sir. First off, I just want to say I love your show. I just want to admit I am a liberal. I'm a Democrat. However, I do enjoy listening to the views of the other side. And I also think that more things could be accomplished if, everybody took the time to actually listen to one another instead of arguing.
I'm not so sure about that.
I'm very nervous right now, so I actually wrote down my question.
Okay, we're going to run out of time, so go for it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I just wanted to know if you believe that the voters who voted for legalization of marijuana, that their vote basically does not matter anymore because Jeff Sessions is going to put it into it regardless.
Tell me, do you think the voters who voted in California against same-sex marriage, do you think their vote should count?
I think everybody's vote should count. A lot of people didn't vote for Trump.
But their votes don't count because the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 against them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, it's a little bit more complicated, isn't it? People, this is the popular. Well, if the people say it, the people should have it. There's a federal law in place that outlaws what's taking place in Colorado. Now, what should happen?
I think that the people's vote is the one that matters. If they're the ones that voted for this.
Well, people voted for federal officials too, and they passed this statute against the use and the growing of marijuana.
But is it not going
so
to
the people voted isn't the answer, really, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if the people vote in a state for something that's horrific, like slavery, should we listen to that?
Well, but that's
a little more complicated. The whole issue's complicated, isn't it? We have certain rights.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Look, I'll take some calls from the former potheads and existing potheads, but I'm not going to turn this into a pothead show. I've never smoked marijuana. That's a fact. But that's not even the point. I know I'm in a very small and distinct minority. When the clock was ticking, and I was cut off at the end of the first hour, what I was trying to say is the fact that people vote, let's say you voted for slavery, in a most extreme example, doesn't mean you're right. And we're not ruled solely by the vote. We have, as we talk about all the time, certain unalienable rights. We have certain unalienable rights, in which case the vote doesn't matter. Now, this is a very interesting case, the marijuana case, not because it's marijuana. It is a product. The federal government regulates products all the time. The federal government even outlaws products if they think those products are dangerous. And yet, when it comes to marijuana, there is a a significant enough group of people who do not want the federal government regulating or banning that product. But when it comes to a host of other products, we don't even hear from these people. The problem is, do I believe the state should decide? Yes, I believe the state should decide. I believe the state should decide a lot of issues. And I believe individuals should decide most of the issues. But that's not the system we have now, is it? So what do? We can nullify laws at the state level that we don't like from the federal government. Yeah, let's do it. And so you have sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities have embraced the same interpretation that the Confederate States did. We don't like it, we're not doing it. You can't tell us what to do. How is that different, then, in those circumstances, from the marijuana issue? Actually, it's quite different. Because under our federal Constitution, the federal government has a significant say on when it comes to the issue of immigration. It's not a purely local issue. And yet we not only tolerate it, the courts uphold state and city nullification. Most of the Obama appointees do. Now, that limitation in the Constitution doesn't even exist when it comes to marijuana. Doesn't even exist. And yet, it seems to me nullification is accepted when it comes mostly to the left's agenda on sanctuary cities or marijuana. As I say over and over and over again, when it comes to the Second Amendment, states have almost no say. The federal government steps in, the federal government steps in. When it comes to social issues or cultural issues, marriage, procreation, and so forth and so on, abortion, the federal government has nationalized all those issues. In fact, the Supreme Court has nationalized all those issues. And the left think that's great because the left's agenda is the left's agenda. They're not so much interested in the process. They're not so much interested in the Constitution. In fact, they're completely disinterested in those. By hook or by crook, the ends justify the means. That's all. But some of us are trying to be fairly rational about this. You're the Attorney General of the United States. You take an oath to uphold the federal Constitution. You're a United States attorney in a district, what may include Colorado. You take an oath to uphold the federal Constitution. So you're going to nullify the federal marijuana law by not enforcing it. Is that about right? Do I have that about right? What other federal laws should we nullify? Because I got a whole list of them that I want to nullify. I want to nullify Obamacare. I want to nullify the tax code. I mean, I got serious things I want to nullify. And we have some very interesting calls. Before I move on, I had another subject I wanted to address, but I think engaging some of these calls will further crystallize these debates and these issues, including this issue of whether or not it's subsidizing blue states or not subsidizing red states when it comes to you deducting your property and state income taxes. Michael, Annapolis, Maryland, the great WMAL. Go.
Yes, thank you, Mark. It's an honor to talk with you, and I agree with you on probably just about everything you say. I do believe, though, that I have a different reflection on this subsidization issue. I live in Maryland, which is a fairly high tax state. But let's give a simple example. Suppose you make $100,000 and you live in a no-tax state, like a no-income tax state like Texas. Then you're going to be paying, say, 25% on the whole $100,000. On the other hand, somebody who's in a high-tax state like Maryland.
What do you mean? Who pays 25%? You mean federal income tax, 25%.
Right. I'm just giving this as an example. Now, on the other hand, if you live in a high-tax state like well, Maryland is 7% income tax, then I make that same $100,000, but then I subtract $7,000 that I'm paying in Maryland tax, so then I'm paying the 25%.
All right, so let's. You don't get the whole 7%.
Instead of the whole $100,000.
You didn't hear what I said. Your adjusted income is not. You don't get the whole 7% back.
No, I realize that's what I said.
You get a deduction, so it depends on what your bracket is. If you're in the 25% bracket, I mean, let's just, without any other complications, you're getting 25% of the 7% back.
Right. I understand.
If you're in Texas, you're paying 0% state taxes.
Right, but you're paying 25% on the whole $100,000 to the feds. Whereas if you live in
okay, and if I live in Maryland, I'm paying maybe the 25% of the feds, and then I get my deduction, and maybe I'm paying 23% of the feds, or 24%, or 22% of the feds.
I'd be paying 25% on $93,000.
But that's an individual decision. You've decided to live in Maryland. Somebody else has decided to live in Texas. You're not subsidizing Maryland.
Well, no, not subsidizing
You're not
Maryland.
subsidizing anybody.
But what I'm doing is, in Texas, I'm paying more to the federal government than I'm paying to the federal government in Maryland.
So we should raise the state corporate income tax in Texas.
Well, that's up to them, but that's what I'm saying.
Oh, now, wait a minute. Everything's up to the state. I got that when it comes to taxes. But let's say we're talking about corporations. Should the same thing apply?
No, I'm not. I'm just talking about the individual.
Well, whatever we're talking about, whether it's individuals or corporations, you decide where you want to live. This is not a subsidy to Maryland. Maryland receives nothing. It's not a subsidy to the individual. The individual receives nothing. You're still paying 22, 23%. The person in Texas, I mean, we're taking a bad example because if you're paying zero income taxes in Texas, that also means, let's say your employer, you don't have to pay as much to an employee. There's a lot of events that we can't calculate. But let's take your case. I said you're not subsidizing Maryland. Maryland gets nothing.
Didn't say you were. No.
Okay. If you don't like it, you can move to Texas or Florida or these no-income tax states. There's nothing that prevents it, which is what people are doing.
Right. But I'm still saying what I'm doing is if say I'm in a no-tax state, I'm paying the full 25% of the federal.
Well, then Texas, I guess your argument should be Texas should be lobbying for an income tax. Now, isn't that ridiculous?
I'm just trying to...
Sir, I know what you're doing. You don't need to keep repeating yourself. I know what you're just trying to do. I'm trying to respond to you, which is this. Based on your logic, the legislature in Texas and the governor of Texas should sign into law an income tax as high as possible for the state, as high as possible, so you can get the deduction, right?
You're completely misunderstanding.
Well, try it one more time.
Okay. The point, I mean, forget about the states. What you're looking at is how much am I paying to the federal government? In Texas, let us say they're paid 25%.
But that's not reality. And that's why you keep altering your example. In reality is, if I live in Virginia, I'm paying a federal income tax, a state income tax, and a local property tax. If I live in Texas, I'm not paying a state income tax, I'm paying a federal income tax, and I'm paying a local property tax. And what you're saying is, oh, don't worry about the state. Well, I am worried about the state. Thanks for your call. The point is this, ladies and gentlemen, following that logic, in order to get a deduction, you would want your state to pass a state income tax. Do you see what I'm trying to say, Mr. Producer? Well, why do people why are people flocking? Why are Florida, Texas, and other no-income tax states? Why are people leaving blue states and going to those states? Because they don't want to pay, among other reasons, they don't want to pay the state income tax. They want to pay lower taxes, which means you have less to deduct. If he's right and I'm wrong, people will be flooding from Florida and Texas into Maryland to pay an effective federal income tax rate, not of his example, 25%, but let's say 22%. But of course that doesn't make any sense, because when you add the state income tax, what's actually leaving your pockets, when you add the state income tax to the federal income tax, it exceeds what you would get from the deduction. That's the point, and I don't mean to complicate this. You're not subsidizing the state. You're punishing the individual. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let me try it this way. I don't know of a single person who moves into a high-tax state for the purpose of having a federal income tax deduction. Do you? It's nonsensical. Nobody seeks to pay state income taxes and local property taxes for the purpose of getting a federal income tax deduction. It's absurd. Which is why the gentleman, very nice man, repetitive but very nice man, kept repeating the point, well, forget about the states. No, you don't forget about it. The individual is paying taxes at multiple levels, or not. Because his logic is reversed. So you'd want to move to California to pay over 13% if you could, because you'll get a federal tax deduction. Well, of course not. Are there instances in which somebody paying state income taxes and state and local property taxes may pay less than somebody that doesn't have a state income tax? Yes, but it would be the exception to the rule. It would be an odd case, as a matter of fact. An odd case. And besides, the Republicans and these pseudo-conservatives are making exactly the opposite argument. They're making exactly the opposite argument, which is we are subsidizing blue states. I hope people's eyes aren't glazing over. But here's another one where your eyes may glaze over. Len, Palisades, Idaho, on the Mark Levin app. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Mark. Thanks for taking my call. I got a question for you.
You bet.
Where in the Constitution does it state anywhere that the feds have the power in the Constitution to regulate a substance like marijuana?
Nowhere.
Well, that's what I was thinking, and all powers not delegated to the federal government, aren't they to be delegated to the states?
Is it the vast majority what the federal government does outside the Constitution? Where does the Constitution talk about Social Security, sir?
I'm sorry, sir?
Where does the Constitution talk about Social Security?
Nowhere. That's not constitutional either.
No, but I'm just making a point that, so what do we do?
You let it all get out of hand. I mean, No,
I just find it odd that the issue of marijuana is the issue where guys like you make your stand.
Oh, I'm a conservative. I was just constitutionally wondering. I mean, I'm a conservative guy, Mark. I consider myself.
But why is it that when it comes to marijuana, the Cory Gardner, of Colorado, this is where he wants to shut down the Department of Justice. This issue. Now, this is a guy who is your typical rhino. You know, he moved from the House to the Senate and so on. This is the issue that motivates Cory Gardner, marijuana.
Right.
This is where there's states' rights. This is where federalism comes into play. Did the man ever say he would shut down the government if we don't build a wall on the southern border? No. Did the man say we'll shut down the government if these cities and states continue to nullify immigration laws? No. But when it comes to marijuana, he's all excited. Why is it this product draws the attention of politicians who don't give a crap about federalism or the Constitution? And then suddenly they wave it around. Can you tell me that, Len?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. They're hypocrites. You know, if it's in their favor, they're totally against it. But when if
you ask Cory Gardner, where the hell is the constitutional basis for Obamacare? Forget about what John Roberts did to our Constitution. And why aren't you shutting down parts of the government over that? He'll think you're a kook. But he'll block all the Trump appointees to the Justice Department who seek to control the Obama appointees who've squirreled into the bureaucracy over there. There he'll take a stand. Not on Obamacare, not on anything else, but on marijuana. Why is this the motivating issue when it comes to federalism?
I have no idea. I was just wondering, you know.
You make a good point. All right, my friend, thank you for the call. And by the way, I'm not saying there shouldn't be Social Security. I'm just saying you want Social Security? Then stop playing games. Pass an amendment to the Constitution that supports Social Security. What the Supreme Court did when it was challenged in the 1930s is, once again, they rewrote the Constitution. So, fine. Do we think there's 2/3 of both houses of Congress that would support such an amendment? I suspect there is. Do we think that 3/4 of the state legislatures would support it? I think so. Well, then go through the front door. Robert, Huntsville, Alabama, the great WVNN. Quickly, go.
Thank you, sir, for taking my call. So Jeff Sessions is essentially rolling back Obama regulations or policy that, you know, has reversed this marijuana position. And this guy from Colorado, Cory Gardner, it's infuriating that he wishes to hold up everything.
He is insisting that the Attorney General of the United States eviscerate federal law, and he's a senator. Well, then do something about it, Mr. Gardner. But he won't, because he can't. I'll be right back.
Him for middle ground? There is no middle ground. Talk with Mark Levin now at 877-381-3811.
You know, if you're starting off this new year with some resolutions, may I suggest one that we should all try? Stop watching fake news. Last year we saw how far the lib media will go, even at the expense of their own credibility. If you missed the last couple of Levin TV episodes of the year, we recapped the Obama surveillance scandal. And by the way, we have a tremendous Levin TV tonight, our first one of the year. It started with total mockery of yours truly by the media and ended with complete vindication. These are the kinds of stories you're only going to get at CRTV. We're bringing you the truth night in and night out. 2018 is shaping up to be a huge year for CRTV. We're adding new shows from hosts all the time, like Andrew Wilkow and Ali Stuckey and more. Plus, the price is less than $8 a month when you use promo code LEVIN, L-E-V-I-N. It's time to fight back against liberal media. Do yourself a favor. Try CRTV for a week completely free at CRTV.com and make sure you use code LEVIN to take $10 off your annual subscription. Sign up right now at CRTV.com, or you can give us a call if you're sitting in your car in traffic. 844-LEVIN-TV. That's 844-LEVIN-TV. I said all the potheads. If you want to call somebody else. I took a few calls on pot. Maybe I'll take one more, but I'm not turning this into a pothead show. We'll leave that for others. Let's go to Georgia in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. How are you on Sirius Satellite?
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much for taking my call. I just wanted to comment on the person who called in a while ago about the two people living in each state, both making $100,000. I don't think that he really understands the tax law in that if they're both making $100,000, then their federal tax rate is 25%, regardless of their deductions that they itemize. So he was talking as if they would not be able to have any deductions if they lived in Texas, and that they would have to pay the full 25%, when in actuality they could take charitable deductions or charitable contribution deductions or out-of-pocket medical expense deductions, so they could get their federal tax rate down as well. So I think he's kind of got it confused.
Well, you explained it better than I, but my point was, look, and I said each case is different, but let me ask you something, Georgia. Do people move into high-tax states for the purpose of getting a deduction?
No. That would be absurd.
Because you get to keep more money if you don't pay state income taxes, correct?
Right, exactly. But my comment tonight was about the state and local income tax deduction, the SALT tax deduction. And I'm just really astounded that none of the Republicans have gone out in the media to explain this concept to the American taxpayer. And I hope everybody will consult with their CPA and accountant tomorrow or this evening and find out and learn this, that if you take a deduction for state and local income tax on your federal tax return, then in the following year, because you took that as a deduction, in the following year you have to report that deduction amount that you took as income. So
That's
now
right.
what's going to happen is that if they're not going to be able to take this deduction, then that means that in next year they won't have to report it as income either. So it's going to end up being a wash.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But really, I would disagree with that, because the time it's a wash is the day you die. Right? Because you keep turning it over as income deduction. So the time where you don't make out is when, okay, it's income and there's no longer any deduction because you've died.
Right. But now there's not going to be any deduction,
and now there's not going to be any deduction at all. So in 2018, people who were taking a deduction and now it's the 2017 is counted as income, you're kind of screwed.
Right. If you itemized last year and you have to include that as income this year.
Yeah, that's my point.
If you get the cap of $10,000 as a deduction this year or next when you file this year for 17, then